Yeah. Hi. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here today. I think the story of my talk, I was sitting next to Derek on an airplane, and I was telling him about how I measure and how we measure things at Branch and the ROI of our community. And he was like, wow, you have to come and speak. People need to know the value of community and how you guys do it, because it's important, I think, for every organization to be able to invest more and grow the community to actually understand how valuable it is. Cool, so about me, I was born, then I went to college, studied engineering, so I don't have really a marketing or community background. So I was kind of thrown into this when we started an app, my co-founders and I, in 2012 called Kindred, and we really struggled, and then ended up starting Branch. So I don't actually have a slide on Branch, but just so you have some background, Branch is a mobile linking and attribution platform. So we help mobile developers and mobile marketers and mobile product managers actually build better experiences, take people to the right place in the app, and measure how people get to the app. So we actually kind of help them with mobile growth. So to kind of understand, so I think a lot of probably the talks you heard today, and I watched some from the back, were really about brands that build community around their brand, right? So I was just watching the Duolingo talk, and it talked about building community with the Duolingo people and with the Duolingo users. And I think what we did at Branch was something very, very different. We actually started building a community from the very early days, and we did not build a Branch community, but we built almost a separate brand, and we called it Mobile Growth, and we built a community around that. And we started it actually even before Branch was started. So when we ask the question, how do we value the measure of community? I think it's important for you to actually understand a little bit the story of our community, because it's not a traditional story of a company who goes, builds a user base, and then decides to build a community around it. So let me tell you a story. And the story starts with a storybook, or with a book in this case, but this book is not actually a storybook, it's actually the book. This was the logo for our photo book printing app called Kindred. So Kindred allowed you to take photos from your phone and all of that, your Instagram and Facebook, and we built a book and shipped it to you, and you got the book in the mail. Pretty simple. We had this idea, like we were in business school, and like regular business school students would have no idea what they're doing. We sat in a room, and we're like, let's come up with a brilliant idea that will change the world. Oh, photo books. Well, it did not change the world. So this is our growth target. So I probably when you go and you look at the growth of your companies, when you look at the growth of big companies today, they all kind of look like a hockey stick. Ours look like a camel. And basically, we had no users, then we were featured in the app stores, and we got a big spike. We stopped being featured, we freaked out, we raised some money, spent all the money on acquisition, grow more, and then basically realized that it was not sustainable, ended up selling the app, and eventually it shut down. But throughout this whole process, we actually realized that we had no idea what we were doing, and there were no resources out there. We would go and try to look for mobile growth resources, and there was nothing. You couldn't go to, there were no courses at Stanford that taught you how to do mobile growth. And there were very few articles at the time as mobile was emerging on how to grow on mobile. So we were like, let's do a meetup and bring some other people and try it out. And this was kind of as we were transitioning to Branch was also a tool that we needed desperately as developers. And as we started kind of building Branch, we're like, maybe the best way to learn if everyone else has the same need that we do is to just create an event and bring all our friends, bring everyone we know in mobile and see what happens. So this was super early days of Branch. It was just the founders. Someone had given us advice to start an event. So I remember we were driving back from one of our investors. I was with my co-founder in the car, and he just went on meetup.com. And he started Mobile Growth Hackers. And we made these t-shirts around those times. I still wear them after 5 years. And we were like, oh, we have no money. Let's get our incubator, Stardex, to host it. And this is our first meetup at StartX. I remember Mike called all the different pizza places in Palo Alto and figured out which one had 2 for 1 that Wednesday, and that's the one we used. And then we went to Safeway and bought all the drinks. And we were like, we need some interesting people to speak. So we reached out to our community and we got this guy, John Egan from Pinterest, and then Joe Binney from Robinhood to come and speak at our event, all the way to Palo Alto. This is the pizza that we had in the StartX offices and people kind of enjoying it. And you know, I remember being super worried that no one would come. I'm like that person that at the party, when the time comes and people haven't shown up yet, I start freaking out. And I was like, where is everyone? But people actually came, and it ended up being a really good event. And then we said, you know, we should scale it. We should keep going. And we started doing them monthly in SF. And I remember partnering with 500 startups. And we hadn't hired Elizabeth, who helped build our community. We hadn't hired her yet, so I didn't actually know about safety. So I remember we got in the 500 startups, we got 500 people, and we almost got called by the fire department because there were so many people in the room. And I never got anyone's email also, another big mistake that probably someone with more experience would never do. But, you know, it kind of proved that there was something there. There was a community to be built. People actually needed advice. People were coming to these things. So we decided to do more and grow it. And we tested many things. We had multiple branch employees. Everyone would fly to a city and try to do a meetup. I remember doing LA on my own. We ended up hiring our head of field marketing and community, Elizabeth, who helped build structure around the mobile growth community. We started doing them all over the world. We tried hiring evangelists in all these random places. And we realized that they would build meetups, but it was very hard to control quality. So a lot of lessons. We also learned that the way our meetups looked in a place like India, where we had actually a ton of developers, was very different than a place like SF, where we had a lot more product managers and marketers, and the discussions were very different. The problem was, you know, this all kind of was really great, and we were seeing a lot of people coming to our events. People kind of starting hearing about the meetups, but we realized that the problem, you know, one day, my co-founder, Alex, our CEO, came to me and he's like, I don't know if we should continue to invest in these meetups. I don't see any value in the meetups. Yeah, I mean, it's cool that we bring speakers and we bring this community, but are these meetups actually worth it? I think you should spend the marketing team's effort on other things. You should do you should sponsor more conferences. I think that makes a lot more sense than you putting so much time and effort into the community. So, you know, it took a lot of time and resources. We had hired, I think Elizabeth was building a team, and we had a few people that we had hired. But we didn't really understand how these meetups contributed to the business bottom line. And that was a problem. I, in my gut, knew that building these meetups meant thought awareness and people eventually learning about branch, but I couldn't prove it. And because I couldn't prove it, I felt I wasn't able to convince my co-founders and the rest of the exec team that we should continue doing this. So my co-founder had this not brilliant idea of saying, oh, what if we took our meetup community and we just made it a branch community, and we did branch meetups, and we basically repurposed it. So I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I guess I'll try it. So we tried doing branch user groups, and we used the same team, the same resources, and man, did it flop. It really flopped. It was, you know, our meetups in SF would get 200 people. At the branch meetup that we actually put a ton of work in, we got 14 people. So we realized that, you know, we had something really good, but we couldn't just now come and say, now it's the branch meetup, and now we're going to sell you branch. So then we had, and I think, you know, our events team had this brilliant idea that let's do a better job actually measuring the value of our events. And if we actually measure the value, maybe we'll be able to prove that the meetups, as they are, without making them branch meetups, without changing the way we do things, are actually valuable. So we did a few things around this, and I'll tell you some, and I hope if you're not doing these already, maybe you are, that you've considered doing them yourselves. So the first one is that we became a lot better at capturing information about our attendees. And this is something that our head of field marketing at the time, Elizabeth, kind of brought in, because when I was doing the events by myself, I was just literally doing them on meetup.com. And I wasn't actually getting any information about the emails of the people that were coming. I didn't know anything about them. So then we started testing ways that we can actually capture information so we understand. So we started with Marketo landing pages, and then we started doing Eventbrite pages. And this was, this was good, but it was not really enough. So then we actually, we were one of the, I think we were the second Bevy customer, and we started using them to actually kind of solidify all the different, all our events into like one landing page, and then publish to other platforms, but have one spot where we could actually get a lot of information about the users. So we can get like their name, their company, email, their title, and a lot of information that actually helped us understand who our customers actually were. The other thing that we did was actually we centralized our events into one page. We call it like mobilegrowth.org, and it's powered by Bevy, but it actually shows the entire community. So when you go, you see, we do about 100 events a year. So when you go, you can see that you're part of a larger community. You can understand that this is not just like one event, but this is a bigger community of people who are exchanging information and thought leadership. This is kind of how our mobile growth page looks like, and you can go and see all the different events around you, and you can go to events. And I've talked to people who come to our events who have been to an event, let's say, in India, and now come to an event in SF, and have gone to an event in Brazil. And that's like really amazing to see people kind of cross-pollinating the different local communities. The other thing that I also think is incredibly important, and we started doing this later on, is actually enriching the data that we get to start understanding who is actually coming to our events. And this is just an example of like reports that we pull, but we use something called clearbit to actually enrich the data that we get, both on the company size, so we build tiers depending on how big a company is, and clearbit give us all the data, as well as titles. Like we use Bevy to ask for titles, but sometimes people don't, we don't make that a required field, and we can enrich that with data that we get from Clearbit, so we can put people into personas. And now I have a very clear understanding for every single meetup group, how many product managers are coming, how many marketers are coming, how many developers are coming. So I can give them better content, and we can show them, we can give them like better panels and better information. So when you think about the results, we've worked a ton. I'm here speaking, but honestly, I haven't done any of the work in building this community after the first year. It's all been our incredible events, marketing, and community teams. And I'm really proud of the work that they've done. So this is an example of just pictures and tweets from some of our events all over the world. A ton of excitement, and people go and actually like really enjoy these events, and it really positions us as a sponsor and creator of these events as thought leaders in the space. We know there were points at which we had 60 cities. We actually realized that in some cities, there's not enough interest, and it's hard to keep a community alive. So we actually went down and decided to focus on a smaller number of cities, but do a much better job there. So we now are in 26 cities in 19 countries. And we have, obviously, speakers from all the big brands around the world. And I think the community of speakers is just as strong as the wider community of people around the world. So when it comes to the actual measurement of like how much meetups influence, that has been something that, as we started to look at the numbers, it really surprised me. So in the past 12 months, meetups on their own have sourced and influenced over 5 million in ARR, And Branch, we've been only, we don't disclose our revenue, but to give you some background, we've only been making money for 3 years. So we're an enterprise company making money for 3 years. So you can imagine that our ARR are not in the hundreds of millions. So actually 5 million for us is a big percentage of our revenue. And it's all brought in or heavily influenced by our community. So when I'm able to show these numbers, I am able to actually convince leadership that this is something important, that this is something that we should continue investing in. The other thing that's also really interesting is looking at the ratio between how much we spend and how much we influence our community events. And here, when I look at spend, I'm actually calculating both the amount we spend in like pizza and beer, but also the salaries of the people who work on the events. So putting together everything, both people and actual marketing dollars, the ROI is still 10x, which I think is phenomenal. It's much higher compared to some of the other initiatives that we do on the marketing side. So, lessons. I will end with 3 lessons. Lesson number 1, don't compromise on the experiences you give your community. I definitely learned that lesson the hard way. First, by trying to make our meetups branch meetups, which obviously didn't work. And second, the other thing has been thinking about the speakers and compromising on the content. We had sponsors at some point, and we let people come on panels and sell their product, and we realized that that doesn't work at all. So we are now, or the sales team saying, no, I really want you to invite these people because I'm trying to close them and they should be the speakers. And we actually realize that when we do that, we compromise on the content that we give the community. And overall, it turns into a lower event, and it does have an impact on the attendance at our next events. So now we allow, obviously, the sales team to submit requests for people to speak. But when the team actually thinks about putting together a panel, they think about the best experience for the attendees. They think about having a smaller company, a larger company, people in different roles, and have a very diverse panel. And that becomes first above other things. And we also never allow sponsors or vendors on the panels, and Branch doesn't sit on the panel ever. We actually only moderate. The other one that also I learned the hard way is to set up measurement early. Honestly, if we had set up measurement early, we would have probably been able to prove the value earlier, and would have been able to actually scale earlier, and it would have given me way, way less headaches and way less me trying to fight with my co-founder to keep our meetups alive. And third is think about sponsorships and evaluate them closely. So one really big mistake I made was when we were thinking about budget, and we've always worked at Branch with not a big marketing budget, and when I didn't see a lot of budget, I tried to find other ways to actually get money for the meetups. And I came up with this idea. I have these sponsorships, and we had someone that was interested in giving us $200,000 to sponsor our meetups, and we're so excited. But when we started negotiating, we realized that the things they wanted to change the topics of the meetups, and they wanted to have them be on all the panels, and all these things that actually really went back to number 1. They were compromising the value of our events. So we decided that to turn it down, and we actually cut down a ton on sponsorships and decided that since it is so valuable that it doesn't make sense to actually take someone else's money and their demands. But of course, we would have never been able to do that had we not known and been able to measure the value. So at the end of the day, the last lesson I leave you with, measure the value of our community. You will have so much more power to decide your faith and the faith of your community. And thank you. I'm Mada at branch.io and Mada299 on Twitter. My mom picked that when I was in high school. So thank you again. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a note. Thanks.